going to mute it. Mute. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to just share my screen with you. Okay, so I would love to know where you're from, where you're tuning in from. I am seeing some familiar faces here, but if this is your if this is your first webinar, and for everybody else who's there, just pop in the comments in the chat section where you're actually tuning in from, because I'm always really curious to know where you're tuning in from. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, for those of you who don't know. So if you're not aware of my Facebook group, and you are on Facebook, I have a group called Healing Little You. And inside of the group, I have a whole bunch of units where educational units and meditations to help support you reconnect to and heal your inner child. And I recently created a YouTube channel as well called Healing Little You. So if you are on YouTube and you do want to watch a little bit more of my work, my name's Anthea Sparks, so you come and follow me on YouTube, and you can also follow the Healing Little You page, which is a separate channel on YouTube as well. So I'm a self-centered psychotherapist, and I studied psychotherapy when I was 26, and it was at a private school in St Kilda here in Melbourne, and it went for 4 years, and it was one of the most intense times of my life, because our teachers were clinical psychotherapists, and they created this school because they really wanted to teach more of the spiritual side of psychotherapy, like the energy side, and really help get people in touch with their spiritual gifts. And so their thing was, if you're going to go out into the world and help people, you had to do the inner work on yourself. And we had to practice on each other while we were seeing a psychotherapist. So it was really intense, but it was really profound. It really helped define me as a person. And also it taught me the importance of doing the inner work constantly, right? That it's a journey. And it also really helped me cement in the tools and the techniques that I wanted to use as a psychotherapist as well. So I'm also a kinesiologist and energy healer. So I've done Reiki. I use cards as well to help get my messages across to my clients. And I absolutely love running workshops in person, which hasn't happened in a couple of years, but also online as well at the moment. I have two little angels, Olivia and Sophie. They have been, massive catalysts for me on my journey. And they are constantly teaching me about my own triggers, as children do, and also about the way that I love. They really reflect that back to me. So they're constantly helping me become a better person. So if you don't have a piece of paper and a pen, I'll invite you to grab one now, just so that we can have a bit of an interactive session. So there's a little bit to get through here. So just spend some time now writing down what it is that has brought you here. What is it that you like? Is there something you wanted to learn today? And if there is, add it into the chat so I can have a look, and hopefully I can answer your questions. Or are you wanting to heal something within yourself? Yeah, so just get really clear about what it is. Okay, so I'll just keep going. If you're still writing, you can just keep going. You can just keep writing and listen along. So here are some of the main things that I notice when people start working with me. They, when they come to me, they say they feel judged, or they feel like they're judging others. They feel attacked, or that they're very reactive. They can feel like they become explosive with anger, or they, like with some other emotion, rage, or they can emotionally shut down and go completely silent. they feel defensive, or they feel like they're going crazy with confusion. They have created this amazing defense mechanism around them made out of walls to protect themselves from feeling hurt. So these are all signs of inner child trauma, okay? They attack self. So you may notice that you have a positive mindset, but you may be attacking yourself in other ways, like calling yourself names or looking at the past and thinking about all of the things you did wrong or how your relationships failed, or that's a form of self-attack, right? So it's really important to look at how you're doing that, because if you're doing that, it's actually counterproductive to having a positive mindset, like going out and being positive. If you're beating yourself up, it doesn't work, right? They've also said that they felt trapped and helpless, that life is dramatic or there's too much chaos, that others have high expectations of them, or that they've placed high expectations on themselves. They don't feel loved. They don't feel like they can really love others. They suppress their emotions. They isolate themselves so they just don't have to deal with other people in life, and that they're attracting the same experiences. So does anyone resonate with any of these? Yeah? Okay. So I want to share a little bit with you about how I got to do what I do. And this is, I used to feel all of those things, right? So 6 years ago now, I gave birth to my second daughter, Sophie, and I was in hospital, and it was the night before I was meant to go home. And I noticed that my eye was twitching like crazy. Like I really had no idea what was going on. And when I sat down to eat dinner, I noticed that I couldn't move my food from the left side of my mouth to the right side. And I thought, wow, I must be really tired. And so I went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and the whole left side of my face had collapsed. And I thought I'd had a stroke, but it was a condition called Bell's palsy. And I had no idea what this condition was. I've never heard of anyone going into hospital to have a baby and coming out with Bell's palsy. And it was the scariest time of my life. And I knew that this was my body's way of telling me it had had enough of my own bullshit. It really had. I had been suppressing my emotions for years. I was extremely angry at myself, my husband, my mum, the world, right? I was a victim. I was a massive victim, and that's how I lived my life. And where I had the ability to love, I had my 20-month-old at the time, Olivia, where I loved her, there was still anger in me. Yeah, I wasn't really living an authentic life. I didn't know how to use my voice. I grew up suppressed. I grew up in a really repressed and suppressed family unit. There was no freedom within me, right? And this is what happens when we don't heal our emotions, when we don't heal ourselves, eventually the body has enough, and it manifests into a physical condition, right? So I was 35 and my body was done. I was cooked, right? Often we see this in 45, 50, 55-year-olds, yeah, where we start to see these conditions manifest. But I had done a real number on myself, right? And that was the beginning of my transformation. And I knew that this is how I felt. This woman, when I got diagnosed with Bell's palsy, I isolated myself for 6 months. I didn't want to leave the house because people would look at me, right? They'd be like, what the hell's wrong with her? And I was mortified. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to isolate myself. I'm just going to stay at home with my kids, because I'd already felt like I'd been robbed of my time with my children, especially my newborn baby, because I was trying to find therapists to help me heal, and I couldn't find any. I couldn't find anyone who specialized in Bell's palsy. So I was like, okay, instead of seeing anyone or going out and doing anything, I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to find a way to heal. So I would get up in the middle of the night and I would think to myself, you idiot, Anthea, you used to have the ability to smile and blink, and now you can't do any of that. And I thought, wow, I never thought I'd ever think that I should have been grateful for something so simple like that. right? And when I was done beating the shit out of myself, which I did a lot of, I started to think about what I was going to do, right? And I remember hearing Louise Hay's voice in my head. For those of you who don't know who Louise Hayes is, she wrote this famous book called You Can Heal Your Life in her 50s or 60s, I think it was. And she talked about how we have the power to heal. And so I had her voice in my head going, you can heal your life. And I had Wayne Dyer's voice in my head, another spiritual teacher. And they were there. They were in my head, right? Educating me on how I could heal. And so that's what I started doing, right? But when I thought about how I got here, because I had to really understand how I got here so that I could never go back there again. Because I was like, there is no way in hell I'm staying here, even though some people don't recover from Bell's palsy, and there's no way I'm ever going to go back there. So this is what I did, right? I realized that I'd suppressed my emotions. I didn't even know what I felt anymore because I had literally boxed it down so much that I couldn't even hear the voice of my intuition. I was made to feel like I was being dramatic and how I felt was wrong, right? So anytime I tried to express to someone how I felt, I was shut down, okay? I would get triggered by everything and everyone. I allowed people to take advantage of me. I was a massive people pleaser because I'd been abandoned so many times. I didn't want people to leave my life anymore, right? So I avoided confrontation. I just sat and I complained to myself or to my husband, to whoever. I was angry at myself, my husband and my mum, which is what I mentioned before, and didn't ask for what I wanted. You know, I didn't even know how to use my voice when I was 35. I was defensive, so defensive. I was a massive overthinker and I was judgmental of myself and others, and my heart was closed off completely. Yeah, the little cracks of it open, loving my kids, but generally I was shut down massively, right? And this was brutal to become aware of because I really had to swallow my pride and I had to go, oh, you got a lot of work to do. And if you don't do it, your kids are going to follow in your footsteps and they're going to become victims too. So if you don't stop beating the shit out of yourself and you don't turn all this stuff around, that's exactly what's going to happen. And the defining moment for me was when my 20-month-year-old Olivia, she started copying me. So she used to smile with only half of her face. She started talking with only half of her mouth. And I was like, and she'd come to me and she'd stroke my paralyzed side and she'd go, oh, mama. And the way she looked at me, her energy was like, what have you done to yourself? It was like she knew, right? And it was then, that was it. Because I was like, shit, she's copying how I'm talking, right? And if I don't clean my act up, I'm going to raise massive victims. So that's what I did, right? So I started to work on my mindset. I started to take responsibility for everything that had happened in my life up until that point. I started to shift my perspective on how I was living and how I was viewing the world and how I was viewing people, how they were showing up in my life. I had to put my hand up and say, you know what, I need help. And I had to allow myself to receive help. Because growing up, suppressed, dealing with my own childhood trauma, what we can often do, most of us do if we have childhood trauma, is we make ourselves so busy and so independent that we don't need anyone anymore. Because when we need people, that's when we can become disappointed. But in doing that, we stop ourselves from receiving. Okay, so it's really important to learn how to receive. It's an act of self-care. Yeah. And I started to heal my inner child. And that was the most profound part of my journey, healing my inner child. I felt like I was becoming whole again. And I was tapping into my childlike essence, which we lose when we become adults. Because when we become adults, there's all this responsibility and there's all this pressure and we start self-attacking and we lose that fun, that innocence, that excitement, you know, that curiosity like kids. We lose that. And it's in bringing that back into my life as an adult that it completely shifted everything, right? That it made me happy to be alive, that it made me happy that I went through all that trauma, because otherwise I never would have woken up and I probably would have just ended up becoming sicker and sicker and sicker. And I think that's exactly what would have happened for me. So I want you to write down what the main thing you need to heal from your childhood is. What is that one thing that just has, impacted you so dramatically and that has stayed with you. So I'll give you an example. My thing is kind of linked in with disregard and not being, well, disregard is, you know, the main thing. And underneath that would be not being listened to. Yeah. No one really caring what I have to say, or trying to get to know me on a deep level. And it's interesting because that has been my whole life up until I started this business. And now I have thousands of people who actually care about what I have to say, and they validate me, and they love what I have to say, and they're interested and they respect me, right? So I never ever thought, or it never crossed my mind that I would get that validation and approval from my clients and my followers, right? I just set out on a journey to help people. And so what it's done in helping others, it's continued to help me heal my own childhood wounds, right? And it's also helped improve my confidence. Because when I first started this business, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to, I wanted to over deliver, right? I wanted to offer more. I was like, it's not enough. I'm not doing enough. I need to do more, right? It's a people pleaser. And what I realized was, you know, people would come to me after a session, they'll be like, that was so powerful. You literally have helped me heal in one session than my therapist has in the last 10 years. And I was like, oh, wow, maybe what I have to say is really important, right? Maybe what I have to say can help other people. So I started doing more, right? But it took courage. I had to really get out of my own way to start doing this. I remember when I did my first live, it took me like 3 hours to actually press go live, right? Because I was so nervous, and I'm like, oh, my face is still crooked and it hasn't healed properly. And what if I look silly or I say something stupid or yeah, right? And that's the conditioning. That's that inner voice going, no, don't do it. You're not good enough. You're this, you're that, you're da, da, da. So what is your thing? What do you want to heal from? What's that one thing holding you back? So one of the biggest things that we experience, that you can experience if you have childhood trauma, is the victim mentality program. Yeah. And one of the biggest ways that I help people is by stepping out of victim mentality. You cannot be a powerful person. You cannot create the life of your dreams, the life that you desire, if you are a victim. Now, when you're little, you don't understand about victim mentality, right? If someone says, you know, your pants are ugly, as a child, you're going to be super sensitive to that, right? And you take that personally, and you're going to be really upset, and you will behave like a victim. You'll probably go crying to your mum and say that someone said really something mean to you. And then your mum will validate that and say, wow, that's really horrible. How could she say that to you? They're not ugly, right? And then that continues to grow. So we keep repeating the victim mentality. And then all of a sudden, all of these bad things are happening to us, and we are the victim in our own story. And this is the quickest way to keep you stuck. Okay, so this is how you take your power back, by no longer being a victim in your own story. Any questions so far? No? Keep going? Okay. So this is what I just mentioned here, right? So this is the childhood conditioning. So when you're little, between the ages of 0 and 6, you create a series of beliefs, and they're based on the things you see adults do and the things you hear adults say, and then your own little interpretations of them. These are your belief systems, right? So for example, if you see mum and dad arguing, and dad storms out and he goes down to the pub, you are going to create a belief about relationships. You're also going to create a belief about how you handle arguments in relationships. You're also going to create a belief around what you do when you're angry. You storm out, you drink, you shut down, whatever it is, okay? And so this continues for the first 6 years of your life. They are the defining years of your belief system. So it's really important for you to tap in and have a look what's in your belief system, okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So let's just talk a little bit about what happens when you get triggered, because this is really, really important, okay? So I want you to imagine that there is a mansion, a giant, giant house, or a massive house, and there's hundreds of rooms in this house, yeah? And behind each door, there is a younger version of you. Now, this younger version of you is you from yesterday, anytime, all the way back to your childhood and even in the womb, okay? And they haven't resolved some of their issues, right? So this little one, he's angry because his dad hit him on the bum one day when he was having a good time outside playing in the dirt and his dad told him to stop, right? This version up here is heartbroken because his high school sweetheart broke up with him. Yeah, they've all got something they've suppressed and haven't resolved yet, okay? So as this person is living their everyday life, someone speaks to them with a tone that reminds them of how their dad spoke to them on this day. And all of a sudden, they get triggered, right? So the adult, the now version gets triggered, and that little version of them kicks open the door, takes over, and gets an opportunity to unleash all of that anger. So that's why when we get triggered and we react, we feel out of control, we're like, oh, and then when everything calms down, we're like, oh, I didn't handle that well. It's because it was that younger version of you stepping in and taking over. Because what happens when younger you steps in and takes over, all your logic goes out the window. Yeah, does that make sense? And so that's what's going on. There's actually nothing wrong with you. Yeah, it's just that younger part of you needs some love, needs some healing. No one wants to be stuck in those rooms anymore. They all want to be set free and they want to come into the present moment with you. They want to live in your heart. But often what we do is we're like, that was the past. I won't deal with that anymore. I'm not that person anymore. I'm just going to shut that away in the darkness, over in my shadow, and I'm going to move on with my life. But it's really hard to move on when you're not whole. It's really hard to align to all of who you are when there's parts of younger you on all these different timelines waiting for you to love them, okay? So only you can heal yourself. I can guide you to do it, but essentially it's you who's doing that inner work, okay? So let me ask you, is there fear present in your life around moving forward? When you're thinking, okay, you know what, this isn't really working for me. Yep, I understand I've got anger and I've been reacting my whole life and I want to change it. I don't know how I'm going to change it, but I want to. So when you think about making that change, is there a fear there for you? Are you scared of the unknown? So what would it mean to you if you could be supported through that change? What would it mean to you if I could take away your fear right now? If I could give you the tools to change, like what would that mean for you? What would that actually do for you? How would you move through that change? I know for me, like if someone came to me to give me the tools that I needed to get where I want to be, I'd be like, I'd feel so free, right? I'd be like, let's do this. I'm ready now. Let's go. Where do we start? Right? That's what I would be like, because there's certain things in my life that have been holding me back my whole life, right? So fear, if I can give you the gift of understanding fear, it's just the main thing to remember is fear stands for false evidence appearing real. That the fear is often just an illusion that is keeping you stuck in this holding pattern of pain. Okay? So if you are ready to take steps towards something you want to change, just affirm that to yourself when fear shows up. You can just be like, oh, okay, there's that thing again, but it's not real, right? Because I already have everything I need to move forward. I've just got to stop being scared. So this is where you've got to go, who's actually scared right now? Is it little me? How old am I? What was I scared of back then? Right? And you'll start getting answers when you question yourself like that. So that's really important when moving forward, okay? And let's talk about the emotional body. Now, the emotional body, we have lots of bodies. We have our spiritual body, our physical body, our emotional body. And your emotional body is literally a representation of how you treat yourself. So if you say negative things to yourself, if you say I'm not good enough, and you think of the past and you think of the decisions you made in the past, or how could I have been so blind to not see how that person was going to hurt me? What you're doing is you're essentially punching your emotional body. You're beating your emotional body up. And your emotional body is responsible for whether you are uplifted and positive about making these changes, or whether you're vibrating down into shame and guilt and negativity and anger, all these low vibrating emotions. When you're vibrating low in those emotions, it's really hard to move forward. It's really hard to think logically. Often your emotions overpower your logic. It's really hard to make changes and learn new information. Yeah. So it's really important that you start being nicer to yourself. Yeah. Every single day, because your emotional body needs time to heal. Now, if this lady, if she's a representation of your emotional body and she came knocking on your door, what would you do when you saw her? You'd be like, oh my God, are you okay? Come in, come and lie down on my couch. I'm going to get you some food. Let me get you some ice. Let's nurture you back to health. You're not going anywhere. You're staying right here. I'm going to take care of you, right? You do that for anyone. So now it's time for you to start doing it for yourself. Okay. So any questions about today's webinar? Has that helped? Did you get some valuable information? Okay, so for those of you who want to hang around, I'm just going to introduce you to my program, my Healing Little You program that I have starting in November this year. And if you want to find out more about how I can support you to actually heal your inner child on a deep level and teach you the tools that you need to transform your life and to support you through those changes, please hang around, and I'm going to jump into that now. Otherwise, if this is where we part ways, thank you for spending some time with me today and learning more about what it is that I do. You can also follow me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you do have any questions and you want to talk to me about the program or anything that I've mentioned here today, you can just message me on Facebook Messenger under Anthea Spark. So just check in the chat and see if there's any questions. No. Okay, cool. All right. So the program is called The Path of the Warrior. And I call this my Healing Little You recovery program, right? So let me get into it and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So here's what you get. You get 16 one-hour group sessions. So the program goes for 16 weeks. And the reason why I've made the program 16 weeks is because people need time to absorb information and to adjust to the changes, right? So it is a challenging program, but if you want to make changes, you're going to have to get really uncomfortable. And what I've found that in a group environment, it's very supportive. You're with other people who want to make those changes too. And the 16 weeks really just helps you not only make the changes, but practice the changes with each other. And I found that to be really powerful. So this will be the third time that I'm running this program. You get an affirmation track to support you to make long-lasting changes in your mindset, right? To get rid of those programs that have been running to help you have a more positive outlook on life. You get worksheets. Like I said, you get the group support, which is really beautiful. You have a Facebook group where all of the recordings are uploaded every week, which you can watch back in your own time as many times as you want to. You do some emotional detoxes that I run, right? So you get these little mini challenges that you get to run, and you also do letting go burning rituals. So a big part of the journey is to release the suppressed emotions, and we do that through the burning rituals, right? Which are amazing. They're one of my favorite things to do, and I do them often. You will feel more freedom. You'll feel like you'll have a more clear idea of what direction you want to go in and who the person you want to become is, which will create a deeper connection with yourself, and you will feel more present in your relationships and your life and in your career. Okay. And you get a couple of support sessions throughout the 16 weeks as well, which means some during about halfway through, you get a couple of support sessions midweek where you get to ask questions and go deeper into what it is you're going through. So each week we run through different things. We work on improving your mindset, reconnecting to your inner child. We work on self-love. We work on diffusing your triggers. I'll teach you how to use your voice in an empowered way in all areas of your life. We remove your need for external validation. I'll teach you how to express yourself. We work a lot on empowered communication. So noticing how you show up in your relationships with others, in your romantic relationships, with your children, with your colleagues, and how you can communicate with anyone in an empowered way so you are heard. Yeah. We work on self-forgiveness and self-acceptance, which are huge. They're really big parts of your transformation. Releasing these heavy emotions, which I say are toxic to the body, which is anger, shame, and guilt. They're the main ones, right? We work on releasing more, but they're the heavy, heavy ones. We work on deprogramming your childhood beliefs and removing suspicion and implementing positive self-talk. So what I was saying before about the positive self-talk, we work more and more on that. So there's a lot of stuff in this program. Yeah, it's jam-packed full. It's designed to give you the tools you need so that you can support yourself for the rest of your life, right? And this is where a lot of us fall short because we don't have the tools. We were never taught to self-regulate. We were never taught to actually express our emotions in a healthy way, not a rageful way, right? We were never taught how to communicate with each other. We were never taught how to be emotionally mature, okay? So usually if you came to me and you were like, oh, I want to work with you one-on-one, and we did it for 16 weeks, you'd be looking at about $2,240 US, right? But for this program and with my programs, I've really reduced the price, and I've reduced it to $597. So it's about $37 US per week, okay? And the reason why I've done that is because it's a group program, right? So you're not paying for my time individually on your own. And here in Melbourne, we're in lockdown again still, and we've been in lockdown for a long time. And so I really wanted to reduce the rate to support people who really needed the help. So the program starts on Saturday, the 6th of November, and it runs for 16 weeks. And the reason why I started in November is because if you have childhood trauma, your inner child begins to get triggered leading up to Christmas. Christmas is the major trigger for people with childhood trauma, because it's meant to be a really happy time, filled with positive memories and family time, but often it's not. And so it's really important to feel supported during that time. And so that's why I started it there. And it will run at 9 a.m. Melbourne, Australia time. So like I said earlier, all of the sessions are recorded and uploaded into the group. So if you can't attend, you can watch the replay. And if you are really wanting to do the program, but you actually can't afford to pay the $597 outright, there's also a payment plan option available for you too. So what I'll do now is I'll just stop the sharing and I will send you the link I'll pop the link in the chat for the program if you're interested in coming and joining us, and also open up to see if there's any questions as well. So let me just put that in the chat. So that's the link. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, under all the information is where you will find the buttons to purchase and join us. But what I'll do now is I will stop the recording and see if